Hey everybody, Daniel Guaba back here with another new video. How's everybody doing? So today we're going to be talking about learning vocabulary. It's one thing that we all really want to do. We want to learn as many new words as we can when we're picking up a new language. But like we mentioned in our last video, we don't want to let ourselves get overwhelmed. Now, one thing that can become overwhelming is spending too much time trying to learn vocabulary. So what can we do? Before we get into the tips for today, I want to talk about memorization versus remembering, or at least how I think about them. So for me, when I think about memorizing vocabulary, that would be something like using flashcards or trying to see words on a list, maybe read the word in a different language on one side, the definition on the other side, basically trying to force your brain to remember by repetition. Now, remembering, I think of as having some kind of connection to a word so that you can remember it in context and give it some kind of special meaning to you specifically. So let's get into that idea a little bit more about rote memorization versus making connection. When we learn something new, usually our brain is going to try to connect it to something that we already know. It's like if you think about words that you've learned in your own first language that are easier to understand when you read them, but might be a bit hard to come up with on your own. The reason that this happens is because words are easier to remember or understand in context. Now, if you were memorizing a word, say, off of a flashcard, there wouldn't be any sentence going with it. So there wouldn't be any clues to help you figure out what the word means in case you get a little bit fuzzy. There are two ways that I like to try to make context for the words that I'm trying to learn, and I'm going to show them to you right now. Alright, everybody, so let's take a look at the word that we've got here. Now, this is a Spanish word, and it is azul. Now, if you didn't already know what it meant, I'll let you know. It means blue. Now, the first way that I like to try to make myself remember words more easily is to look for words that I already know inside of this new word. Now, there's a trick to it. You're going to have to stretch some letters or sounds, and you might have to delete some sounds, but the idea is not to get something perfect. It's just to give you something to remind you of what the new word means. I tell my students to try to connect the first word that comes to mind when they see a new word in a different language, and not to worry about whether those words actually have any connection to what the definition is. So here's my example. So when I see the word azul, I immediately think of a zoo, like a place where you have a lot of animals. For this word, we'd have to take off the L. That's okay, because remember, we're just trying to have a way to hint us to getting back to the definition of the word. It doesn't have to be exactly the same. And then what we can do here is now we have this idea of a zoo when we're thinking about azul. And now we need to just connect the meaning of a place with a lot of animals and the definition that we want to learn, which is blue. So how about this? I went to the zoo and all the animals were blue. So if you can think in your mind, you have to really picture it and imagine. You went to the zoo, you saw a lion, you saw a giraffe, you saw monkeys, you saw whatever you wanted to see, but they were blue. Something that's really shocking. You wouldn't expect to go to the zoo and see blue animals, right? And this is another important part of making hints for yourself, is you want to make them outrageous or really stand out in your memory so that when you come back, it's easier to remember what your hint really even was. And then we can take it one step further and replace the word that we want to know in a different language with the English word in our sentence. So now we can say, I went to the zoo and all the animals were azul. And we'll know that azul means blue because we have our hint. Now you can go out there and find what are called mnemonics to help you remember words. Now what are mnemonics? Well, a mnemonic is simply a memory device, something like the sentence we just created, to help you remember the definition of a word. It may be tempting to go out there and find mnemonics that are already pre-made, but I like to suggest to my students that they try to make their own mnemonics, as hard as it might be in the beginning. The reason for this is that if you spend more time thinking about the word and really molding the sounds, putting it into a context yourself, it's going to become that much more personal to you, and it'll be easier to remember than if someone else gives you a mnemonic and tries to have you remember their way of remembering. Think about it this way. I think it's easier to remember a story that you have told because you've experienced it, rather than tell a story that someone else has told you. Alright everybody, that's it for this video. Just a quick tip on how to help you remember vocab words. So the key takeaway is use mnemonics. Now you can use mnemonics whether it's changing sounds of words to sound like words that you know, maybe using rhymes, or even using pictures, which I'm gonna try to do in another video. So look for that soon. Another reason that I like having my students use mnemonics is because it's fun and you get to play around with words and think outside the box. And I think language learning should really be a fun process. You shouldn't have to sit down and spend hours and hours just flashcarding yourself to try to learn a few words. Now, I'm not saying flashcarding isn't a good study tool. I actually do flashcard myself, but what I like to do is I like to write my mnemonic or even give a little context or maybe a sentence on the opposite side of the definition on the flashcard just to beef them up a little bit more and make them that much more useful. So I want to hear from you. Have you ever used mnemonics before? Have you even heard of that word before? What's the time that you were trying to learn or remember something and you were able to use a trick to help you remember? Why don't you go ahead and tell me in the comments below. Again, thanks for watching, and I hope you found this video fun and useful. I'll be coming out with another video really soon. The next one is going to be about instruction. So I'll be teaching you a bit about a language that I speak. If you want to have some input onto what language I'll be going over next time, go ahead and put that in the comments as well. Remember, we have choices of Spanish, Japanese, and Chinese, whichever one you guys would like to hear. Remember to hit the subscribe button so that you get notified of the next time I upload a video, and I hope to see you there.